Good morning, everybody. Or good about noon, everybody. It's noon now. My name is Pastor Jonny Hayasaka. I am the chaplain, and I teach 5th through 12th grade religion and Bible classes this year. So that's never boring. I wanted to talk to you guys today. My sermon today is entitled Imbalancing Act. And one of the things I'm hoping that I have some videos to show you, and it's possible that they're going to work. I want you to know that when we talk about our audio-visual and lighting people who help at the church, that they are often balancing many different things, including someone who's going to come in and preach and has a lot of complicated cues for them to follow. And so we're trying to see if we can get some of these videos to work. Can we show the first video? Okay, now, do any of you ever feel like that might be a metaphor for your life? No, I heard a no over here. That is amazing. I dream of such things. I tell people, and some people think this is funny, but it's not a joke, that I dream of boredom. Boredom sounds nice to me, but sometimes our life feels like we're balancing a lot of things. I imagine that there are at least a few people in this room right now that have that feeling, like you're balancing a lot of things, an unusual amount of things. But I've got another video I want to show for you. Let's see the second video. Now they're just showing off. Maybe you're scrolling through social media, you're walking into work, walking into church, and you see that individual or maybe that family that always seems so well put together. How is it that they juggle and balance all these things in their life so well? Come in, children, quiet, calm, collected, amazing, well-behaved, not running around the church in the middle of a sermon. Maybe you're like me and you see people who have this ability to seem like they have everything put together in an impossible way to balance all these things that you may struggle with. In fact, let's see this third video. That's not it. Well, that's not the video. So we're gonna, here it is. And maybe that's how you actually feel, right? Rather than the previous two videos. Maybe you feel like it just looks like a mess and everyone sees it. And I have one last video for you today. Let's see this last one. All right, finally, some of us work very hard to try and balance all the things that we've got going in our life, and sometimes we have failures. And it can be pretty embarrassing, especially when they're public rather than private. So today we're going to be talking a little about balancing today. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Now that I have a long commute in the morning, traveling from Angwin, California to Napa, I have a lot of time to sit in the car, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. And one of the podcasts I was recently listening to, and I listened to again for this very sermon, was on multitasking. Now, in this podcast, it explained that modern or current thinking has this understanding that multitasking is not really a thing. That in fact, what multitasking appears to be for ourselves and other people is actually switching from one thing to another thing, and some people are more efficient at switching back and forth than others. Maybe you've seen some of the demonstrations of people where they'll test people driving a car around some kind of obstacle course of yellow cones and trying to talk or text on the phone while they do it. And you see, they compare how people drive distracted with people who drive while intoxicated. And they compare the levels of intoxication to the quality or lack of quality for people who are distracted while driving, often with our mobile devices. And they basically say this, that it's a problem. They say this, multitasking, when we switch, it causes increased stress and increased amounts of errors in our work or in our life or in our communication. So the podcast said this, multitasking leads to mistakes, lower productivity, and stress. I imagine it feels like that to you. Have you ever heard of the concept of inbox zero? Have any of you guys heard? This is brand new to me. Inbox zero. It's this concept that if I look at my email inbox, that there's this mythical unicorn idea that I could have 0 emails. Now, I've had many conversations with people, and I ask, so how many unread emails do you have in your inbox right now? And I want you to know that the average that I've heard that does not make me blink once, it doesn't startle me at all, is about 30,000 unread emails. It is not uncommon for me to meet people who have about 30,000 unread emails. So if you have about 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and you told me, I'd go, oh, yeah, okay. Now, the most I've ever heard of was over 60,000 unread emails. My feeling at that point is just delete them all, because you're never going to get to them. That's my feeling. I try really hard to have as few unread emails in my inbox because my email is not the only thing I'm trying to track. In fact, if I pulled my phone out right now and I showed you my calendar would look like all the colors of the rainbow. Multiple shades of blue, in fact. Blue is what I use for Napa Christian Campus of Education. There's dark blue, there's light blue, there's baby blue. And I use colors because I'm tracking my classes in high school, my classes in middle school, my chaplain stuff. I'm tracking what the elementary, the Conquest people are doing. I'm tracking what the middle school students are doing. I'm tracking what the high school students are doing. And it's not only my calendars. I'm tracking other people's calendars at the school as well, so I know what's going on in campus. And that's just one app. I have 2 calendar apps I actually track, and 5 to-do list apps that I'm trying to figure out which one helps me be more efficient and more effective to track all the things that I'm trying to balance in my life at any given time. I'm imagining that I'm not the only one that has some version of this weighing in on their lives. And one of the greatest challenges is this, that no one ever asks less of us. The to-do list never gets shorter. Even if I check off 20 things, 25 things replaces it. The Barna Group, which many of you may be familiar with, is an organization that has been researching insights about faith and culture, and they suggest that younger generations right now are notably more open to spirituality than some older generations. That's curious. But there is some nuance in understanding how this takes shape. Speaking specifically about Christians, the Barna Institute says this, and I think I have a slide up here. According to the Barna Group research, a significant majority of Christians view spirituality as a positive aspect of life, considering it one of the important elements contributing to a well-rounded existence, alongside other values like family, community, and personal growth. Now, here's one concern as they put out this research over the last decade or so. The concern is that with this attitude about spirituality, spirituality is one good thing amongst many other good things that make a good life. And that means that for some people, that means that spirituality is not just one of good things, it is on the same plane as important as getting a good education, is as eating well and having a healthy diet, being well-traveled, having a good paying job. So spirituality is on that same table. It's not higher or lower. It's just one of the many good things, which means that as we're juggling things and we're trying to keep balance, what happens is it's possible for spirituality, even for Christians, to not be more important than many of these other pursuits and parts of our lives. I want to look at something real quickly, but and it's this concept that we are often facing not just simple questions of a good decision and a bad decision, trying to put our energies or resources of time, money, relationships into a good thing and then saying no to a bad thing. We are often juggling two good things. What happens when I'm trying to decide between a good thing that might be my family and another good thing that might be education? Now that seems like a simple decision. Of course I choose my family over my education. And yet, in real life, things don't play out that simply in simple binary different ideas when we're talking about life. This is a very difficult and sometimes painful process to go through, making decisions between competing values, for instance, family, financial stability for our families often, health, spiritual well-being, service to others or service around us, leisure time, self-care, and versus trying to take care of other people. So the text I shared with today and Mr. Muick read for us comes from the book of Matthew 6, chapter 33. And I have a version here from the New English Translation, which I'll be using today. And this is in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And in the middle of it, Jesus begins to talk about worry. He says, don't worry. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear. And he talks about, look at the birds. They live their life. They're doing well, and God cares about them. I imagine that God cares even more about you. And towards the end of the statement about worrying, he uses these words. But above all, pursue his kingdom and righteousness. And all these things will be given to you as well. Jesus has these statements that says, no. Things are not all on the same playing field. That in our lives, that we have to make a choice, and that we have to choose that some things sit higher on our list than other things. I'm going to read from you today, and if you're welcome to join me, I'll have slides in here. And this is from the book of Luke now, the Gospel of Luke. And this is a famous story. And Jesus is in the house of Martha. If you're a Christian, you've heard the story, you're familiar with it, what's going on. And Martha is hosting Jesus, and she's preparing food for him. And we get this little glimpse into the world of Jesus and the life of Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus. So in Luke chapter 10, starting verse 38, it says this. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him as a guest. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he said. The Hebrew people, the Jewish people, were a people of storytelling. We have to remember that there was a point in human history that there was no written books, there was no recordings or podcasts or anything like that, and the only way information and knowledge was transmitted was through sitting around maybe a fire at night and telling the story, and then telling that story again, and then telling that story again until people memorized it. That's how they transmitted this information for generations, millennia. And so when the Hebrew people hear or see certain things around them, it sparks memories. They go, oh, wait, I know this story, or I know what's about to happen because I've heard this before, or I've heard a story like this. They also, when they saw certain things, it caught their attention. In different cultures, different things mean different things. So when we see it, it catches our attention differently. So when I was in the country of Zambia, some of our translators, when we would be walking from village to village, when they felt like they became friends with us and that we had good relationships, they would begin to grab our hands, to hold our hands as a symbol of friendship. But most of us who were American at the time would go, why is this person holding my hand? We were taken back by that. Because for us, when we see that, it sparks different ideas than it might in the country of Zambia. So when I read this text and I look at it, this is one thing I'm seeing. When it says the words, Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he said, I, having studied this, and the Hebrew people or Jewish people who would be reading this, they said when they saw that, the imagery that is in their head is that Mary is in a position as a student or a disciple of the Rabbi Jesus. Her posture down at his feet, listening and learning, is the image that portrays someone who is a student and a disciple of the rabbi. This is important because in this time and place that we're reading from of the Bible, this was a patriarchal society, that many people would not see a woman in that position as a student or a disciple of any rabbi, let alone the Messiah. So she's sitting there learning from Jesus, and it says this, but Martha was distracted with all the preparations she had to make. So she came up to him being Jesus, and said this, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work alone? Tell her to help me. I can't tell if this is passive-aggressive or just plain up aggressive. It's one of those things. I haven't decided which one it is. So you may have experienced this. I can't imagine any of us hasn't had a version of this. I just had group projects in my freshman and sophomore classes. And I assure you, one of the things that was first brought up to me is, what if I do all the work? How are you going to give a grade to my partner? And I said, I have eyes. I can see. But anytime we're working with other people, we have these situations that happen. Some people feel like they're doing work, while other people are not helping or perhaps being lazy. And yet, in this situation, this is how Jesus responds. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. When we see these double words, Martha, Martha, which I have highlighted here, the author Luke is telling us that this is someone putting out an emotional response. So in the book of Luke, at least, when you hear these double words, it's telling us something, and that Jesus is filled with emotion right now. He has compassion. And we need to know that at this moment, Jesus is not judging Martha. In fact, he thinks what she's doing is a very good thing. He's having compassion upon Martha at this point, actually. And it says this, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. Mary has chosen the best part. Or some translations might translate as the better part. It will not be taken away from her. When it comes to the Christian life, we have to create a hierarchy of our values. Here's why. When we have to make a decision between two good things, how do we make that decision? And if we have our values lined up, I know that this is more important than another thing. It makes it generally an easier way to make a decision. It doesn't make it an easy decision, but it makes it easier because I know what's most important to me. I know what I'm saying yes to, and I know what I'm saying no to. So for some of us, when we are making decisions, we have to say yes to something. So I've got a picture of my family a few years ago. So we go, well, I'm going to say yes to this. And if I say yes to this, it may mean that I have to say no to something else. Maybe you're saying yes to something about your spiritual well-being, studying, coming to church, your spiritual life, and you can say, I'm going to say yes to that. Then, of course, most of us have some version of this. We have a work life, and of course, we have to say yes to that because we have to pay the bills, get food, and put fuel into our cars. And for our students, and maybe some of you even adults who are working, you also might be studying, so you have to say yes to that too. I'm going to say yes to this. And all of a sudden, the things you're saying yes to start cramping space to where it makes it harder and harder to balance all these things. So what if I want to say, I got to do some yard work? And so I guess I'll put that on there. And at this point in time, I've got to make some space because I'm going to need a coffee. And then you said, oh, wait. But how about, I need to have some time to get some exercise and play. So I think I can fit this on here without it falling off. And then, I got to make some money, and I've got this big pile of cash from all over the world, so I got to put that on there too. Oh, and it's always good to be well-traveled. I've got this, it's a bull roarer from Australia, so I think I can fit this on here. And I think I'm going to need another coffee. And I gotta play some pickleball. Wait, but at this point, I don't think I can do pickleball and do yard work this Sunday, so I think I'm gonna say no to this for now, and I'm gonna add some pickleball here. And then I want to do some reading, so maybe I'm gonna change this reading for this reading. So I'm gonna say no to that. And then I'm going to need another coffee. Oh, I got to do laundry. I got to do laundry. So maybe I'll say no to this reading, and I'm going to need to say no to pickleball today. And then I need to play some games. I need to have some fun and leisure time. So I think I'm going to need another coffee. And at this point in our lives, we realize the weight of having said no to things that may be most important to us. Maybe it's this at any given moment. So I can fit this in today. Maybe you feel like today I've got to go to work, so maybe I have to say no to something for my family today. And it feels like this might be our life. This might be our life. I think one of the things that Jesus begins to tell us, and this is something that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a gift for the world that we could do better at sharing. We have a symbol called the Sabbath. It's a symbol, it's an experience, it's the idea. And for some of us, including myself at points in my life, I saw the Sabbath almost as a burden. Like it felt like I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do, or I couldn't get the things done I needed to do, because if I was to honor the Sabbath, then I would refrain from those things. And at some pivotal point in my life, I realized that no, that's not what's going on at all. That it was actually an opportunity for something more and better. It was the ability to create margin in my life so that the rest of my life would actually come together and be healthier. It was the opportunity to say, you know what? Some of these things don't control me. This does not control me. This here, it doesn't control me. That is an opportunity for these things. And Jesus says, but seek first the kingdom of God, and all the rest of these things will come together. I wanted to share some ideas of maybe how we can put this into play in our lives. So I have a list here of 4 simple suggestions. And the first one's this: lean into the seasons. And this is illustrated partly in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Here's the idea. That at any given point in our lives, we have different seasons or times where everything kind of gets out of sorts. So maybe at that point in life, we actually have to say yes to something that we might not ordinarily do for that season, knowing that at the end of that season, we put it back. It's temporary. There are seasons in our life where we just have to. We can't be too rigid in how we apply some of the ideas. There's seasons in our life. So let's be okay with that and lean into the seasons of our life. Number 2, be kind and understanding towards yourself and to other people. If you make a mistake, and maybe you say no to your family when you should be saying yes, maybe we need to have some ability to be gracious and kind towards ourselves and gracious and kind towards those around us, our family, our friends, who may also be imperfect and make mistakes as well. If we practice that kindness towards each other and ourselves. 3, Walter Brueggemann wrote a book called Sabbath as Resistance, where he essentially makes this argument that we can utilize Sabbath as an opportunity to resist having or doing more in our lives. That when we try to cram more in our lives, maybe Sabbath is an opportunity to resist those urges or those desires in our life. And lastly, I have here says turns towards. And if you know Julie and John Gottman, maybe the most famous relationship researchers in the world right now, John Gottman tells this story. Real quickly, John and Julie Gottman say that they, within 4 to 10 minutes, can tell if a couple is going to stay together or not. When meeting a couple, within 4 to 10 minutes, they can decide whether this couple is going to stay together or not, and they can answer that question. And he tells the story. He says, this is the story. He says, I was getting ready for bed one night, and I had a book that I was just about to finish, and I was so excited to get to the conclusion of the book. So I'm rushing to bed, and I'm ready to get into bed, lay down in bed, and start reading the conclusion of this epic novel I was reading. And he says, as I walk from the hallway, past the bathroom to the bedroom, I see my wife over the sink in the bathroom, visibly looking sad and in bad sorts. And he says this, he says, for all of us, in that moment, I get to decide whether I'm choosing this or my wife. It seems like a very simple thing. What does it matter? What does it matter? And he says this. He says in all their research, one of the easiest ways to tell whether a couple is going to stay together is that during any time, they're light or heavy or serious or happy, that the couple, I'm going to use my hands as illustrations here, even in fighting, that they turn toward each other. So, when John Gottman sees his wife there and is deciding between these two, what seem unimportant things, he could choose to turn away from his wife and choose to read his book that he's been wanting to finish. Or, in that moment, he can choose to turn toward his wife. So he says, I'm supposed to be an expert at this. So he says, he walks into the bathroom, he says, how are you doing? What's going on? And he enters into conversation to see how she's doing. And the Gottman suggests that is the key thing to knowing the well-being and longevity of any couple or relationship. So at any given moment, turn toward, and when I say turn toward, I'm talking about the person, the presence, being present with the people around us. If the people in our lives are more important than other things, whether it's social media, whether it's making money or whatever, I'm arguing choose to turn toward the people than to turn away in every opportunity you get a chance. I just want to finish off with this last text from the book of Matthew, chapter 11. If you are feeling the weight of some of these things that you're trying to balance out in your life, then I'm going to read this verse to you today. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my load is not hard to carry. Amen. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that your goodness will be shown through each of our lives as we choose to put you first and lift you high in our lives. We're grateful for your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen. Happy Sabbath.